Rolling.
Dr. Peavy, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me about the care model transformation and share the information with the management guidance team. I'm sorry that you couldn't be with us in person today, but it's great to have you here in this fireside chat. So I wanted to first start with just talking about the care model transformation. And I know when I first heard about it, I thought, gosh, that sounds grandiose and very fancy. And I wondered what it meant. And I wondered if you could take a few minutes to explain what it is.
Why, sure. It is a fancy word, isn't it?
Yeah.
So care model transformation, I think, reflects the fact that we've come to realize that the care that we're delivering to patients in the way that we've been historically delivering it is neither entirely satisfying to the patient, nor is it entirely satisfying to the provider, high incidence of provider burnout and so forth. So I think in calling it transformation, what we recognized is that we, like other industries, find ourselves at sort of a branch point in history where the way that we've been doing things in the past is not going to be sustainable in the future, and we really have to transform it completely. I think it's not unlike other industries that have found themselves in the midst of a transformation process, whether it be banking, and you remember bankers' hours, 9 to 3, got to come in person if you're going to cash your check, or the travel industry or shopping. All of those industries really were required by the end user to undergo a transformative process. But what I think is really unique and cool about the work that we do is not only do we have to transform the delivery model so it gets much closer to the customer, to the patient, but also we need to fundamentally transform the product, what's in the box. We have to unpack the box and look at it and find out why it's costing so much, and yet the outcomes don't support the high cost, and our patients aren't entirely happy with us. So that gives us an opportunity to take a step back and say, what do we need to put in the box? What's different? And for us, you know, the key secret ingredient has really been linking together the two sides of the house, the healthcare of the medical, physical being of the person, and then the 65% of concerns that bring patients into primary care that are fundamentally not related to their physical health, but related to their psychosocial concerns, their undiagnosed depression, their other behavioral health comorbidities that are influencing their ability to care for themselves. So we're saying, no, let's not keep those in separate boxes. Let's put them in the same box and integrate them. And that's really the heart and soul of healthcare transformation at the Everett Clinic.
You know, I notice feeling excited when I hear you say words like transformation and sustainability, and certainly, you know, focusing on patient satisfaction and provider satisfaction and burnout and looking at the whole person are, you know, very compelling to me. I wonder why this is important to you and what keeps you inspired and keeps you going when we hit roadblocks.
You know, it's a really funny thing because initially my interest in this was triggered by trying to understand why is the cost of care so high? Why is it? And trying to look and figure out where the money's going in healthcare, and recognize that a large component of it is really going to undiagnosed and untreated behavioral health comorbidities. And then that led me to understand how frequently those are the cause of human pain and suffering in the primary care office. And the primary care physicians are heavily burdened with trying to provide that care as well as the routine care for patients, not necessarily equipped for that kind of work. And then in researching how other countries have approached this, you know, I learned that many people have become quite compelled by believing that integration of the behavioral health and the physical health really is the answer to trying to create a more sustainable healthcare system where we're able to respond to all the needs of the patient. So that was sort of the journey for me. And then I think just in looking at the burden that we have in Washington State of addiction and chemical dependency, and the number of excess deaths and morbidity and emergency room visits that entails, as well as recognizing that until we attend to that, we can't provide optimal care for even the medical conditions such as diabetes or heart failure without successfully integrating, understanding what's the impact of that condition on the patient and how do we support that more effectively. That's kind of a long story.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what you describe is really visionary work. I mean, you're talking about radical transformation and really addressing some of the things that have, caused inflation of costs in healthcare. And it's generational work, right? And so I wonder how you're thinking about how we get started and how are we designing experiments and how are we going to know whether what we're doing or not is making a difference?
Well, two comments I'd make. One, you're absolutely right. It is generational work. It took us a long time to get here, and it's going to take us a while to get out of it. But I think there's kind of a growing consensus in the country, almost like the Malcolm Gladwell blink phenomenon, where people are recognizing and realizing that the system is broken and that we need to weave together behavioral health and physical health care of the patient. So that's a national conversation going on. So the first thing that we did was we poked our head outside of the foxhole and we looked around to see what other people were doing and what was successful in other areas at beginning steps of integrating behavioral health and traditional medical care. And surprisingly, what we learned was one of the more effective techniques is one we actually have experience with in the past when we were in a more capitated environment. Paul Schoenfeld led the work to help us launch shared medical appointments in which the patient receives care at the same time simultaneously from their healthcare provider for their condition and from a behaviorist who's able to facilitate the conversations about how are you feeling about this and what's getting in the way of your ability to care for yourself, and create an environment where people with similar circumstances can begin to support each other and form a network of support. So we have experience in this area, and now the research is abundant in showing that it's actually superior to traditional care in managing diabetes and in managing several other impactful chronic conditions. So we thought this is a great place to begin. We have a little experience doing it. The evidence supports it. And we have a wonderful leader in Paul and his team to help us begin to put this infrastructure in place.
One of the thoughts that came to me as you were describing that is how remarkable it is when we're faced with an opportunity to implement one intervention that could potentially impact the quadruple aim. That's amazing, right? How often do we get an opportunity like that?
I don't know, but it's pretty incredible when we do.
Yeah.
We better take advantage of it.
Exactly, yeah. So in closing, I would just love for you to say a little bit more about why you've called together this MGT, this particular group, and what you're asking of them.
Well, first of all, I just want to say I'm really sorry that I couldn't be here, and that some of this work with the VITA has expanded my vision of what flexibility means. So when we hear that there's going to be a meeting 2 days from now and my presence is needed there, I have to adjust my own personal expectations of what my time is going to be spent doing. So I appreciate that fact because it's given me a chance to grow a little bit. But I do miss being here because I want to really encourage the members of the management guidance team to view this work as really important work, foundational work in helping to improve the environment of care for our patients and supporting and creating a healthier workplace for the providers of care as well, and remove the barriers that might get in the way of your team being able to fully devote themselves to the work to help put this infrastructure in place and learn from it so we can continue on the journey.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
And when we have the event in January, I hope that you will share with us what was in your stocking.
Go team!
Go team. Thank you.
You're welcome.